Hacienda is a labor system constructed by the Spanish Empire and was owned by the hacendados. This consisted of a large estate and a big house. The only resource workers had was their labor, and these people had nowhere else to go because the hacienda already provided food and housing.
There are three main types of large haciendas or estates. The ranch, which emerged from the estancia, is one example. The second kind of hacienda consisted of a mixed farm, when a portion of the land, typically near the headquarters, was planted with crops. Some estancias transformed into haciendas. Compared to the estancia, the mixed farm required less capital and labor than a specialized farm. The specialized farm, which typically focused on producing a single crop for a distant market, was the third type of hacienda. Sugarcane, rice, cacao, and wheat, the typical crops grown, needed to be processed. The hacienda was not just one place. It would in general expand over the long haul. However, it was susceptible to more widespread economic changes.
Hacienda residents lived on land that was previously covered by the state's constitutional laws, but continued to belong to the landlord as his private property. The hacienda became the dominant institution in many rural areas at the beginning of the 17th century as Spanish ownership expanded over lands that had previously been shared by Indian groups. In the 17th century, families and lineages, not individuals, were the actual owners of haciendas. Some estates could not be divided because several relatives owned them all together. Peons are farm workers who work for big estates. Most of the time, they live in haciendas on land that is rented from the estate. In exchange, they have to work for the landlord.
Until their debts were paid in full, the peons, also known as indebted laborers, were unable to legally leave their place of employment. Their sons would inherit their debts if they died before paying off their debts. Due to the distinctive concepts and definitions of masculinity that resonate with Mexican history, hacienda culture can be understood as a subset of traditionalist masculinity. Other than the Caribbean, where slaves worked on plantations, the rest of Latin America adopted the hacienda model, which led to an increase in peons.
By the end of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th, the hacendados possessed observable economic and political power in the colonies and frequently played multiple roles simultaneously, such as landowners, miner, bureaucrat, or merchant.
Hacienda landlords also managed to gain some political power after the liberal reforms freed them from the burdens of demands from other ways of taxation, like annuity payments and extremely high mortgage interest.
To close off our movie, our group picked this topic of the haciendas because we found it interesting how, although it was in slavery, the debt accumulated by the peons made it so that they and their kids could never escape.